Preparing to live stream. And it might take a long time because apparently our connection's slow.
Are we recording in case we need to push it out later, Morgan? If the lines...
Oh, it's gone. We're good to go.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm so thankful for your young, smart, thoughtful brain that you know how to do all those things.
So now everything's good to go.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to BPA's Go Team meeting, where we follow the agenda as it's been emailed to you and publicly noticed. I'm pleased to call this meeting at 6:07 to order. Our first order of business is to call roll. So if Allie would go ahead as our secretary to take our roll.
David White.
Yes.
Ed Cruz.
Here.
Laura Shao.
Here.
Melanie Williams.
Here.
Marlene Ganaway.
Here.
Morgan Kingray.
Present.
Jordan Lingenfelter.
Here.
Myself, Charles Brown II.
Here.
And Asha Rogers.
Here.
You're all present.
All right, so do we have a quorum?
We have a quorum.
Excellent. So we're going to go to our first order of business, and that is to approve the agenda. This was provided to you. So go ahead and take a moment to just double check our agenda. And does anybody have any changes? All right, looks good, looks good. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Allie. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Melanie. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand. Did you get all those, Allie?
I'm going to assume Charles and Asha were ayes.
Yes. Any abstentions? Any nays? Alrighty, good to go. So we're going to go ahead now and approve our meeting minutes from the last meeting. Those were also emailed to you and attached to your calendar invite. Are there any corrections or anything that needs to be said about our last meeting minutes?
They're also in the chat.
Thank you, Allie. Excellent. If there are no corrections, may I have a motion to approve our previous meetings minutes?
Motion to approve. I move to approve.
Okay. Heard Laura first, so we'll go with Laura. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Ed. All in favor, say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Excellent. Any nays? Any abstentions? Alrighty, we are good to go. Thank you both for those approvals. So our first discussion item is to discuss hiring our new principal and going through that process, the timeline, the workflow for that. So we have both Audrey Sofianos on our call. She is our wonderful cluster superintendent, as well as Matt Rogers, who are cluster rep for HR, and they're going to talk through this process with us. Welcome, welcome.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I can tell this is a very high functioning Go Team meeting and a Go Team. I do see that Diane Jacoby has joined the call from APS, and
Hey, Diane.
Good to see her too. So as much as I'm looking forward to working with this Go Team, I have to say and I'm sure this team is too, very sad that such an exceptional leader is electing to retire. Happy for him. But, there's sometimes a situation where there's a school and there's a leader that comes along and the match is so amazing that just magic happens. And that is what has happened at this school. I have watched it because I started at Morningside the same year that Mr. White started at BPA. And so watching this and worked with him way back when I was at Sutton and he was at E Rivers.
Yeah.
So this has been an amazing thing to watch. And so we're going to do, some people are just not replaceable, but you have to replace them because he's going. We're going to do everything that we can to find you another magical match as this school goes forward. So Matt Rogers is our HR person and has coordinated these types of activities in the past. And so he's going to explain to you the process. And we're going to work very collaboratively with this team and your community to really help to identify the strongest leader to come and lead Burgess-Peterson starting next school year.
Yes, we are excited to be joining this team. And yes, David is irreplaceable. That is for sure. But I love that he has established a level of leadership that you all are very familiar with. So as we start there's just certain processes where we build in getting the community voice and the staff voice and the teacher voice and start shaping this profile of what do we want to see in the next leader at Burgess. And so I want to kind of talk you through what that looks like, a little bit about the timeline for when that will happen, and also kind of take any questions that you may have after I kind of go through a lot of information. And then also, like, even after this meeting, if you think of any other questions that come up as you're talking to your, I know there's community members, there's parents, and of course staff. If you're talking to your coworkers or your colleagues or next door neighbors, if you think of any questions that you're wondering about, I want to encourage you to shoot me an email. Diane Jacoby's on here. Sophianis is here. We want to definitely get on the front end and proactively communicate with the community as we really kind of walk this journey together. And collaborate on finding the best person to step into the role. So there is a document that, Morgan, if you could pull that up, I can kind of talk through it. All right, there it is.
See it now.
Yep. So this is a flyer that we create for every school. And as Audrey referenced, I actually used to be the director of leadership staffing. So for about 2 years, my job was facilitating all the hiring of assistant principals and then director level and above at the central office. So I had the opportunity to work with a lot of communities throughout this process, and it's been a lot of fun, and I'm excited to join you all with this journey. We're going to actually, and I'll get into each one of the tiers, but tier 3 in particular, we're all going to spend all day together. That's a big day for us, because that's when we interview. That's when we have the large community panel interview. So I just wanted to mention that as we kind of go through the steps. So the way we've designed the process is after you all get back from winter break, we're going to open up a survey on SurveyMonkey, and it's going to be open to your community, to your staff, all the staff. It'll be posted on your website. It can be shared whatever way stakeholders expect to get communications from the school, and we want to hear from as many folks as possible. It's not that long of a survey, but it helps us get the voice of community members and staff members and parents around a couple different domains. And so that survey is going to be open for about 2 weeks. And then if you scroll down on March 5th, so the survey will close on the 3rd. On March 5th, if for anybody who didn't have a chance to take the survey, or who wants to see, anyone who wants to see kind of all the data that's been collected so far. We're going to have a March 5th, we're going to have a staff meeting at 3 and then a community meeting at 4. We haven't decided exactly how we want to do that. Sometimes we do a virtual. Sometimes we do a hybrid, where it's in person and virtual. Sometimes we just do it in person. Again, it's really, I kind of market it towards anyone. Hey, if you didn't have a chance to really give feedback on the survey, then come let your voice be heard, because on March 5th, after we finish that community meeting, that'll be the end of taking feedback on the principal profile. And then the next day, we'll consolidate all that data, and then we're going to make it public. So it'll actually be sent to the school, and it'll be shared with parents and staff and posted on the website. Again, just kind of, this is the culmination of all the data about who you want to see as the next leader. What we're going to do is we're going to use that profile as a tool to advise advise the rest of the process, because that profile is going to go to tier 2, to tier 3, and to tier 4. So let's talk about those. So who is the chair and the co-chair on the Go team?
I'm the chair.
Okay, Morgan. Okay.
Yes, and Ed.
Co-chair.
And Ed. Okay.
Yeah.
So Morgan and Ed are going to join myself and Audrey on for tier 2 screening. What that tier 2 screening is going to involve is we're going to look at everyone who applied. We're going to look at the principal profile, and we're going to filter to find the best candidates who've applied. Now, you all, Audrey and I are going to do that work. So let's say we had 50 applicants. Okay. We're going to be looking at all sorts of details on those applicants, their experience, where their experience has been, different roles they've had in their education career. We're going to look at their references. They're going to have to do a higher view video task that's going to be scored by all the other principals in the Jackson cluster. And they'll get a score based on that. We'll look at that score data. We look at a lot of different data, but let's say we narrow it down. This is just an example, but let's say there's 50 candidates that apply. We're going to narrow it down to, if we can narrow it down to maybe 15. Okay. When we get together with the chair and the co-chair, Morgan and Ed, and the 4 of us are going to look at those, let's say just top 15, and we're going to decide out of those top 15, based on the principal profile, who deserves the top 6 that get to interview in front of the whole school community for tier 3. So we select the top 6. Those top 6 will then be invited to tier 3. Now that's where the entire Go team's a part of that. And then there's also 2 cluster principals. So probably, and Audrey will determine exactly who that's going to be, but likely middle school, maybe high school, depending on availability. But we'll have 2 other cluster principals from Jackson on that panel. And that's the day where we'll get together. The first thing we'll do is we will create the questions that we want to ask those 6 candidates. We'll create them that morning. And they'll be very, it's a collaborative effort to determine what do we really want to hear from these 6 candidates that will give us insight into who the top 3 will be. Because on that day, our goal is going to be to narrow it from 6 to 3. And that's going to be pretty much an all-day event. And you do have to be there from start to finish. So there's consistency in the panel for the full day for all candidates. So that's a big day. That's the most important day, honestly, because at that point, that you all, along with a couple other folks, are going to determine the top 3 that get moved up to tier 4. Tier 4 is where the superintendent is going to interview the top 3 candidates, along with the cluster superintendent, Audrey Sofianis, and also the chief of schools, Mr. Tommy Usher. So those three individuals will conduct the final interviews with the top three. After those interviews are held, the superintendent will make the decision on who of the top three he would like to offer the job to be the principal at Burgess. We backward designed this whole process based on getting it to a certain date for the board to approve. The superintendent is taking all principalships to the May 6th board meeting for approval. So at that time, on that date, we'll find out who the finalist is, and they'll be approved by the board. Now, you may wonder some questions that might come up. Well, when would the person start? Which is a good question. It's really going to depend who the person is. I have seen a couple different scenarios for that. If it's someone who's in APS, we work very hard to try to get that person approved to go ahead and start working directly with David, so they can shadow and work collaboratively to start getting I like as quick as possible, depending on what role they're in, to get them working with David, meeting the community, starting to build those relationships, before kids even get out. We've seen that very successful as we think about the transition period. If it's someone who might be outside of APS under contract, so that could be subjective based on the flexibility or backfilling whatever position they have in another district or in another state. So it's really subjective based on who that finalist is. So that's a question that comes up a lot. As far as parent voice in the process and staff voice, that's something that's super important to this process. And we've really kind of baked in a lot of transparency with developing the profile to kind of start filtering out people that don't fit kind of what you're looking for. That really helps a lot. Then that profile is a part of tier 2, where community go team voice really helps narrow it to the 6. And then tier 3, the whole go team has a voice on narrowing it to the top 3. And then that school profile, that principal profile will be part of tier 3 and then part of tier 4. So that's really the process in a nutshell. Audrey, anything you want to add or think of anything I left out, or we can do some Q&A, whatever.
I just want to add that as we're narrowing, let's say we have 50 applicants. So as we start looking at those and looking at qualifications and looking at references and digging into each candidate, I'll be very involved in that, doing everything I can, especially for those that are coming from other states, coming from other districts. We want to make sure that we put quality folks with proven track records, in front of you all. So we'll be really digging into that, and there's different tools we can use, but sometimes the best tool is a phone and talking right to the people that work with the person. So that will be going on kind of at the same, prior and at the same time. Like I will be digging. And I know Mr. Rogers will help with that too.
Oh yeah.
And other folks in HR. So we really want to make sure that we just are, I think this is going to be a very sought after position.
Oh,
this is such a
absolutely.
great school. And so there's going to be a lot of candidates, I believe. So we really want to get the best for you all to even look at choosing from, if we do get those 50 applicants or however many we get.
Yeah.
So questions, do you all have questions about the process?
Oh, yeah.
I don't have a question, but I think Mr. White put it in the chat. This just became very real.
Yeah,
So I think we're all digesting.
absolutely.
Yeah,
I
just
find it hard to believe that there's not a short list of maybe some candidates that people have had eyes on. Is that how I mean, is that kind of part of the 50?
Yeah. So, yeah, there's a list of people. I mean, we'll post the job that's specific to Burgess-Peterson principalship. So, because there's great candidates out there, but maybe they're not looking at elementary. But yeah, we've got some strong candidates. Having done this work for 2 years and seeing how we've grown a lot of people internally in APS, and then just knowing some folks that are in close neighbor, like next door districts, that are interested in getting into APS. And then you have a school like Burgess that comes open that's a really spectacular school. So yeah, we're gonna have some high quality candidates for this for sure.
Hey, Matt, can I ask a favor?
Sure.
Thanks for the presentation. It's super helpful and it makes it very real suddenly.
Mhm.
I know our legal name with the state is Burgess-Peterson Elementary School, but none of our people know who that is.
Okay.
We only do business as Burgess-Peterson Academy. So
Oh,
if
yeah.
on your survey and on your
Mhm.
flyer and anything that our people will see, if you
Yeah,
could please use Burgess-Peterson Academy, I'd appreciate that.
I absolutely can.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll make those edits. And if this is the QR code, and I didn't drop the link in, but that is the real QR code. The survey is open, but it's gonna say Burgess Peter Elementary School on it until I change it tomorrow.
You're fine. You're fine.
But
Nobody will
yeah,
know about it until then anyway, so it's okay.
yeah, yeah, but I can definitely I'll tweak that to Burgess Peterson Academy.
And the Burgess-Peterson has a hyphen between it as well.
Okay,
Yep. Our nomenclature is important to us. Thank you.
absolutely.
Also, I just wanted to say I love that timeline. The idea of board approval May 6th, that's really great. I think
Mhm.
it builds in the opportunity for possibly some overlap and some
Mhm.
early visitation and some meet the parents and meet the kids. I love that. I hope that that really comes to fruition. I think that's a great plan. Thank you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If it were my choice, it would be in April. But
Yeah.
it's not.
Oh,
It's May. But yeah, there's great overlap because that gives you potentially, uh, you know, the rest of May and into June to really uh, train n- just partner with a person and get them introduced to the right people and to do meet and greets and all that stuff before summer really gets big
yeah.
and families are gone. So
I guess their actual first contract date would still be July 1. No?
it's
Mhm.
depends who it is.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I
Oh,
could
hi, how
say,
you doing?
yep.
No, good. But hi, this is Charles. So I did have a question, and I understand the timeline for the principal and how it could be, but there are some other key uh, staff personnel that are leaving as well, and so
Mhm.
just kind of wondering how that timeline looks at, and then how much Go Team has and that, or is it strictly that the principal chooses their number one or their lieutenant next to them? So just kind of understanding, because from what I understand, we are losing our lieutenant as well. So Burgess is taking a huge hit, and I'm very passionate about Burgess. So just kind of wondering how that works out as well too. And do we
Can
have
I
input in that, or is that solely to the principal?
Yeah, can I let me respond first, Charles, and
Mhm.
then we'll hear from Matt and Audrey. Matt and Audrey may or may not know that our assistant principal and our special ed lead teacher are also retiring this year. It's my intent, if we have paraprofessionals, teachers, other staff, I intend to hire all those teacher people, staff people before I step away. My intent is also to allow the incoming principal to be involved in the hiring of their assistant principal and their special ed lead teacher because those are such critical roles to the leader. So it's my opinion that the new principal should be allowed to hire those persons. So that's my tee up, Matt and Audrey.
Mhm.
No, I mean, I would support that 100% because
Yes.
I mean, David, you know the school better than anyone. So like partnering with that new leader, um, to be an advisor or to even sit with that leader and be a part of the interview committee for their AP and their CELT. I think that's great. That would be awesome.
Yeah, so the new person will do that. And I think I think, David, you had the opportunity to do that same thing early on in Burgess-Peterson also. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
So
it's
then
really
that-
critical. Yeah.
Yes. So I think that's a great suggestion, great plan. So that is something that both Matt and I would help, again, source candidates, source quality people for the new principal to then have selection of quickly for the assistant principal and the special ed lead teacher. And then with Mr. White hiring all the teachers and other staff, that is extremely helpful for the new person coming in. So that sounds like actually a very great strategic plan in this transition.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, like what we'd probably do, because this May board approval, I don't see any reason that would change. We would probably go ahead and backward design posting that AP job and that SELT job, and then go ahead and getting the pool of candidates ready. So after the person's named on the 6th, they could, again, depending on who they are, they could be a part of starting that work in collaboration with David right away.
I love that.
Yeah.
And also, just to put a finer point on part of Charles's question, it's not been my experience that the Go team is involved in the hiring or the identifying of an AP or a CELT. Is that still true, Matt, Audrey?
That's true. That's up to that's the principal's. Principal's the hiring manager. Yeah.
And the Go team has input into the hiring of one employee, and that's the principal.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Sure. Great question.
Really, really good question.
Yeah.
My people are strong, y'all.
They are. I know. I know. Well, here's one other factor I'll just throw out there, because Burgess is such a great school. There are times that a sitting principal in APS will throw their name in the hat for a vacancy. So if that happens, that sitting principal automatically makes it to tier 3. So they're one of the top 6. And again, when you've got a great school and a great school community, and a great leader like David is going to retire, you have other folks who may really be looking for a great opportunity. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there, that sitting principals in APS that are interested in a principal vacancy, they automatically make it to tier 3. And so that happens. And I will say, like, we'll talk a lot about the confidentiality that wraps around this whole process. And that's a prime example. When situations like that come up, it's really confidentiality. We'll sign confidentiality agreements at tier 2 and at tier 3 for many reasons, but that's just one of them.
And just know, Ed and Morgan, you'll be the ones involved in those final 6. And Matt and I have talked, and in some instances, it's a final 7.
Mm-hmm.
Because there you are finding the candidates that you want the team to meet. So just know that there is that flexibility too. So we really want your input. We really want your input. So now I know you guys have your allocation meeting. So I know you've got other things, but is there anything else you want to ask of us now? And you can, as Matt said, you can reach out to either one of us. We can help answer any other questions you might have after you think about all this. As Mr. White said, it's now become real. And I think Ms. Rogers said it's like settling in, that this is really happening. So you may have more questions later.
And I just dropped my email in the chat. So feel free to shoot me an email. I'm here to help.
All right.
Thanks, Audrey. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate you being with us tonight.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
All right. Y'all have a great meeting.
Come on. You don't want to hear about our budget?
I looked at your
I've been
budget
looking
earlier
at
today. I looked at yours earlier today. I've already seen it. So I'm excited to see what changes you make.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thank
All right.
you.
Take care.
Thank y'all.
David, I'll stick around and see your budget. How's that?
Okay, fine. Sounds good, Diane.
Hi, everyone.
Hi,
Happy New Year.
Diane. Alrighty, also, like we said, we're going to get into the budget development process. That's our big discussion item for the day. And so with that, the first status is just to review our meeting calendar, just to make sure it's in alignment with when we need to meet. So we have meetings on both February 13th and on March 13th, both at 6 p.m. Diane, you can give us guidance for that. Do those dates fit with where we have to meet?
By 1 day each. Yep, it's Feb 14 and March 14, so we're right on track, it looks like. Diane, is that true? Yeah. Good.
It's like,
Yes, that you have to be complete by February 14th and March 14th. Just know that if you're on the 13th of each and there's a snow day, you can still meet because we can do this virtually. So you have no wiggle room is basically what happens. But
Okay. Sounds good. Is everybody good with those 2 dates?
Yes.
All right, excellent. So now we're going to go into our budget allocation presentation, and that's going to be run by Mr. White. So I'm going to tee up his.
Thanks, Morgan. I'd love it if you would share your screen and drive for me. That would be super helpful. So as you get that going, I'll just say that I'm happy that Matt and Audrey were able to be with us tonight. Seriously, that made it feel very real and very imminent, which is interesting. And it also dovetails nicely with the presentation I have for you tonight, because I feel like the most important thing I will do between now and June 30th is to create a budget and a staffing plan that sets my successor up for success. And I think with the allocations that I'm sharing with you tonight, you will probably agree that we have the opportunity to do that, and I'm excited about that. So tonight's presentation is all about the money that we've been allocated, the resources we've been allocated for next school year, which in budget terms is FY or fiscal year 26. And I'll be sharing with you the dollars we've been allocated and how those dollars were arrived upon and some of the staffing provisions that have been made. I'm not making or bringing recommendations for how to spend those dollars yet. That's what our next meeting will be about. So that's the tee up. Morgan, let's get started here. The agenda you've already seen. Oh, this is not the right deck, Morgan, because I've already updated all those things. Hold, please. You know what? Maybe let me just share mine. How do I do that? Let's see here. I haven't done this in a while. Where do I go to share? Share screen. Sharing is not turned on. I'm sending you a request, Morgan.
All right, you should be able to do it now.
Okay. Let's see here.
I have the correct one.
You do?
If
Okay.
you want me to drive it.
Let me see. Can you guys see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, I'll just drive, Morgan. Thank you,
Okay.
though. I appreciate it. So there's a capture of. Let me go to. Well, that'll be fine. I had included the agenda. Some of this is redundant to the discussion we've just had. Here's the discussion items for tonight's meeting. We already did the HR timeline. Now we're going to talk about the workflow for the budget and the allocation itself. This is a reminder of where we are in the process. So every year we develop a budget that is grounded in and attached to our strategic plan, the data review that we conducted in the fall. We also ranked our strategic priorities, and that informs the way that I will bring a recommended budget when next we meet. Here's where we are in the workflow. We're at the third step where I'm sharing with you the allocation that we've been given for FY26. And we're right on track with the timeline for doing so. And Morgan has already talked to us about these 2 subsequent dates when we'll have some actions to take. Morgan, you see in green on this slide, I said, Morgan, are these dates okay? And I think we have just agreed that we are barely within the timeline, but I think those dates will work well. It has been my practice in the past as we get close to the date for our February 13th meeting, I will share with you my thinking in advance of that meeting. It tends to make that meeting go a little better and go a little more expeditiously, so you can get a jump on and have your questions ready as we meet, because those meetings can get a little lengthy. Tonight is my opportunity to let you know how much money we've been allocated for next year and where those dollars came from or how they were arrived at. And I'll be interested in your input about the allocation itself, and then we'll revisit our strategic priorities, and I'll have your input in mind as I continue. Actually, I've already begun making some plans for my recommendations, but I'll carry information from tonight's meeting into those next steps as well. This is just another reminder that the budget is a reflection of our priorities and our goals for the school, and those are tied directly to our strategic priorities. And I think on the next slide is where this is our actual strat plan, and I've circled or indicated in purple our 7 priorities. And then on the next slide, I have them captured in their rank order, which we did in the fall. We agreed to this rank order that's showed on this slide. Take just a moment to reground yourself here. Our priorities in this order are improving outcomes in mathematics, improving outcomes in literacy by using structured literacy practices, maintaining and growing our opportunity to offer the International Baccalaureate PYP. We really have a lot of emphasis on whole child systems of support. That looks like counseling, it looks like SEL, it looks like social work. We have a need to continue to improve teacher efficacy, and that's typically done through the support of our coaches and professional development. And then the last 2 are about engaging our community and continuing to grow a positive school culture. Some parameters and priorities as I think about this allocation, and to ground my work as I start crafting a recommendation. We want to keep our class sizes as low as possible. Class size really matters in the presence of a strong teacher. Nothing matters more than the quality of the teacher, but in the presence of a strong teacher, class size really can make a difference. We want to make sure that we have the opportunity to support our math work, our literacy work, our whole child work. And we have made a commitment to continuing to be a strong IB PYP program. Those are some of the early things that are in my brain as I think about these dollars and how I will recommend we spend them.
Hey, David, I just want to pause for a second. The rank order you presented is different than the order that we agreed upon at
Tell
the
me
last
more.
meeting.
Tell me more.
I'm sure you have the update. We switched. I'm going to pull up our document.
I have like my notes from last month.
What did we swap-a-roo, or is it simply
we
done?
We moved the authorization down to number 6 because we had gotten the good report and are not up for authorization again until 29.
Okay.
Whole child, we moved to 3rd.
Okay.
Improve efficacy, we moved to 4.
Okay.
Inform and engage school community, we moved to 7. And what does that leave? Move up, foster a positive, informed, and engaged school culture to 5.
Yes.
And we maintained 1 and 2 in their current positions.
Thank you so much for that. I apologize. I did a grab and paste from our October meeting. I apologize. I've captured that. Can you see that I've made those edits on my screen? I'll shuffle the order when we conclude tonight, but I've captured it.
I can share the updated PDF that we worked from.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Could you just review the numeric changes I've made and make sure that matches what Allie said?
It does. It matches exactly.
I appreciate that. Thanks, ladies. Okay. Now, the allocation itself, this is just a very, very quick overview executive summary. It's a reminder that this reflects what we believe is important for our school. And the basic allocation number captured in the middle of this screen, 9,248, sorry, 9,248,160. significantly more than last year, and we'll talk about why and where those dollars come from. And then the last bucket of information on this slide shows our projected enrollment next year of 592, and that's an increase of 20 students over what our projection for the current year was. It's important for me to remind you that that 592 does not include approximately 40 special needs students who are located in our low incidence units, our 3 autism classes, and our preschool special needs. Those students are not included on our projection, but they are accounted for in our staffing tab. So if you sum those, that tells me we will have, or you will have 625 to 630 kids in the fall, which will be about 20 kids more than we have now, 25 kids more than we have now. I think those projections are spot on for the fall. Okay, this is an important but somewhat busy screen. I want to orient you, if I may. In the center of this page, this is the budget we're living with right now, the budget that last year's Go team worked with me to develop and to approve. On the left side is the allocation for next school year, FY26. And then on the far right is the difference. So let's start at the top here, if we will. The year we're living in now, we had a budget of $7.4 million. The budget we are allocated for next year is $9.2 million. And that is a difference of 1.8 million and change. A pretty significant increase. If you look at it, the per pupil earnings, the year we're living in now, we earned $12,939 per pupil for each of those 572 kiddos. Next year, we are expected to, or we've been allocated $15,622 for each of our 592 projected students. So that per pupil earnings went up by $2,600. That is significant, y'all. That is a really significant increase in the per pupil allocation. I'm excited to tell you about where that comes from. It comes primarily from this next chunk of data right here. Join me by looking at the middle part, please. So for this year's budget, our kindergartners each earned the base weight of $5,334, and then they also earned an additional 60% of that base weight. So our kindergartners are expensive to educate, right? There's a para in that room, and that's an additional staffing cost. So those kindergartners earn us the base weight plus 60% more each. That's significant. And for next year, that remains the same. We will still get 60% of the base weight on top of the basic allocation for every kindergartner. Interestingly, we'll have 20 more kindergartners than we had this year, so that's a significant bump in revenue. Last year, here's some differences come in. Last year, our first graders, each of those kiddos, 117 kiddos, got the base weight and then 25% on top of that for each first grader. Next year, our first graders will each earn the base weight plus an additional 50% of that base weight. That is a significant increase in revenue. Similarly, our second graders and third graders last year earned us an additional 25% of the base weight. For next year, our second and third graders earn us an additional 45% of the base weight. And our fourth and fifth graders didn't used to earn us any extra percentage of the base weight. And next year, they will each earn us 40% of an additional base weight. So that is really significant. And that's where the bulk of this change comes. This $1.8 million upward allocation basically comes from that change in the SSF allocation. SSF standing for Student Success Funding Formula. I've lost my image of where you guys are. I imagine you are excited about those numbers as I am. Do you have questions before I step forward?
I have a quick question. So with that, I mean, I'm just trying to understand. So is that because we're doing good, or is that because we're needing more? Is that because of the influx of I guess, taxes in the neighborhood? Just where does that all come from? Because that is a great deal for fourth and fifth grade not to have received anything. Is that
Yeah.
s- is that school wide? I mean, is that school wide or is that district wide or is
That's a
everybody
great
getting that?
question. Yeah, that's a great question, Charles. So the district has changed this SSF, the grade level weights for everybody. All elementary schools, all traditional neighborhood elementary schools are experiencing this exact same change in the ways the different grade levels are weighted. So that's really great. I think there's an attempt to more fully fund elementary programs than I've seen probably ever, Charles and all. It's pretty exciting. I'm going to share with you in a little bit in a couple others in a couple slides. Um, so you might remember last year, our teachers, after the school year started, our teachers and staff, everybody got on average an 11 to 15% raise, right? So that was really a big deal. It made the news. It was really important. We're very pleased and proud of that. As you might imagine, that is an expense that is permanent, right? That raise doesn't go away. So last year's approved budget did not include that raise. So the money came after the fact. We were back booked with those extra dollars in our budget to pay the people that additional 11 to 15%. And that's a pretty significant number. And I've broken that down for you in a couple slides. So while this $1.8 million upward change is really positive and very exciting, the bulk of that is eaten up in the added cost of that 11 to 15% raise times 60 full-time staff, right? It gets eaten up pretty quickly. But yes, Charles, all schools are benefiting from this adjustment to the way students earn those extra percentages of the base weight. It's pretty exciting.
Okay.
Does that
Thank
help?
you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Question.
Yes,
for sure.
This is just gen ed, right?
Yeah, so we get a little bit of an allocation for SPED, Jordan, but the bulk of our money for special ed is shown deeper in the deck by staffing, but not earned dollars necessarily, because the district pays for our SPED staff out of the district's SPED budget. So I don't, we're not accountable for those dollars.
Okay.
So to your point, yes, these dollars are to run our gen ed program, and I'll show you a little bit about that as well. Great question. The only thing I do fund out of our general budget is our SPED lead teacher, because that's such an important programmatic part of managing all of our students who have individual education plans, keeping us in compliance, scheduling so many meetings, and managing Go IEP and all those things. So I do fund that. Okay, let's see here. I have to minimize you guys because I can't see my screen. That always throws me off. So I'm going to do that now. All right, so here again, so that's how we earn money based on the number of students we're projected to have and the grades those students are in. You can see that here again as well. This shows you the difference between what we're earning for next year and how that's different from what we earned last year. That base allocation is pretty significant as well. Okay, in addition to earning money for every student we're projected to have and additional dollars based on the grade those students are in, we also have some additional money coming in that's under the title of additional earnings, as this slide says. So again, to orient you, the middle here is the budget we're living with now, and the far left is the allocation for next year. And on the right is the difference. This is important and significant in a couple ways. If you notice, this year, our signature program, which is the International Baccalaureate, was funded at an amount of $281,000. If you look at next year's budget, there is $0 there for signature programming. That's an important change in the way the district is funding signature programming for next year. We're doing something different. Many of you know the term zero-based budgeting. And that's what's happening for our IB program for next year. So I'll show you deeper in the deck how much we are requesting for our signature program for next year. But that automatically has been removed from our base allocation. And here in the difference bucket, you can see it looks like a reduction of 281,000, and it is a true reduction, but I expect we will earn almost all of that back once the district considers my rationale and request, which they will do on or before next Friday, the 31st. And I'll talk you through that slide a little bit later. So our additional earnings are pretty flat, like we have $42,000 to the good, and that is inclusive of that chunk of money that we're not being initially allocated for IB. There's also another thing on here that's important. Last year, all schools earned a flex position. All schools earned the equivalent of a teacher position, right? The flex position, in case you wanted to do something different or innovative, or if you needed another grade level teacher on some grade level and didn't have the money to do it, you had some opportunity to use that flex position. But this year, because they increased the amount of dollars we earn for every kid at every grade level, they've removed that flex position or the dollars attached to that flex position from everybody's budget. So some positives and some less positives here. But we more than make up for these dollars that are lost from the increased per pupil funding. So here's the slide I was where'd it go? Here's the slide I was referencing earlier. So it's a strong allocation, and that is indeed good news. We are on the good side of things here, but this is just a reminder to keep in mind that a large part of that increase will be spent to maintain the raises that our full-time employees received earlier this year. The third bullet here reminds us that in last year's budget, an average teacher, a full-time teacher with benefits, retirement, and salary cost us $109,000. For next year, because of those raises and increases in expense, and a full-time teacher with benefits, salary, and retirement contributions costs us almost $132,000. So multiply that over the 60 full-time employees that we have, and that comes up to almost 1.4 of that $1.8 million increase. So we are definitely receiving more money, but a lot of it will be spent to maintain those salaries, benefits, and retirement contributions. Still good news. I'm not poo-pooing it, but I just didn't want us to be as excited as that initial $1.8 million sticker shock looks like. Okay, here's a little bit more information. So I showed you the projected number of students per grade level earlier. We'll talk about that at a slightly more granular level when I bring you our budget recommendation next meeting. But our summary tab does a couple things for us. I've circled in red 3 key things here. There's a column that tells me what each of these positions costs us, right? And for most of the people on this slide are full-time teachers, and they all cost us the same, right? We have to budget for the average salary. We don't budget for, like, a first-year teacher costs me the same as a 30-year teacher, right? We budget for the average, not the individual's specific salary. That cleans up and makes budgeting a little easier. And for a school like Burgess, where we have a lot of experienced teachers, it probably comes out in our favor, honestly. So this next column says 5.0. That tells me that we have been funded to be able to have 5 teachers in first grade. The next column says, for right now, in the year we're living in, how many do we have? So for our FY26 budget, we have funds for 5. We currently have 5, so that all matches. And so for first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, you will see that we are funded for the same amount that we actually have. So that's good news. That'll be cost neutral. And when I look at the projected number of students, those 20 additional students are distributed pretty evenly across all grade levels. So it's my current impression that we won't need to open up an additional grade level at any grade. So I believe we'll be able to have the same number of homerooms at every grade that we have this year. So that's really good news budgetarily and from a master scheduling perspective. Interestingly, here you might see this, the reading teacher, K5. We hired someone this year to work with students who were flagged for possible markers of dyslexia. We're not staffed for that because that's an innovation that we selected to do. So we've staffed it up, even though it's not funded. So that costs us, right? That's a drain on our budget. That's an expense that we have to account for. Here's something I'm excited about. Check out this green arrow. Because they're funding us differently, more aggressively, better, and because our enrollment continues to inch upward, we are actually slated to earn or be staffed for more than a full-time art teacher, more than a full-time music teacher, more than a full-time PE teacher, more than a full-time language teacher. So that's really great news. It's my early impression that we won't actually need to hire an additional art teacher or an additional music teacher, but we can use those extra revenues associated with that 0.4 to do other things like funding this dyslexia teacher and some other fun things. I'll be bringing recommendations around that to our next meeting, but I wanted to point it out because we're at an enrollment threshold and the district has changed the way they're funding some things to where now some of our programming and some of the way our kids learn and are tagged earns us more money in some cases than it costs us to provide that service. So that's a really cool thing, and that feels new and different this year. Here's another example of some of those positions, the number that we are funded for, the way we've staffed it, and in some cases, whether it's a difference that costs us or a difference that helps us save some revenue. ESOL, we earn a 0.3, and we've staffed it for a 0.3. Here are some of those interrelated teachers. Even though I don't have to technically account for them, we earn 2 interrelateds, but we have 3. So if you see this column that says earned, these are positions that I don't get to finagle or change or adjust upwardly, right? These are positions that the district funds from their special education bucket that don't technically hit our budget, but they are certainly included in our staffing plan. And there are a good many of them. You know, we have a really robust special education offering at BPA, and this is where most of those friends are accounted for on our staffing sheet. Interestingly, look at this first purple arrow. I was mentioning that because we're being funded a little more aggressively and because we continue to grow, this is the first time I've ever seen it on our allocation where the district has provided funding for a second assistant principal. We've never had that before. Now, do I think we need a second assistant principal? I do not. And I will not bring a recommendation that includes that. But because we are funded at that level, that means we can use some of those dollars to pay for some of the other things that we've become accustomed to and that we rely on to keep our outcomes strong. Similarly, this is the first time we've ever been recommended or funded for a bookkeeper. Never had one. So we'll spend some time with my admin team and my instructional leaders thinking about if that might be a useful position. And if it is, do we need it to be a full-time position? Could it be a half-time person or a retiree or an hourly position? Or we'll think of that recommendation. Certainly, I'll meet with our secretary and see what parts of her work would be made easier with some help in bookkeeping. But that's new. So we've not had that before. We've not had the opportunity to do that before. The non-staffing tab is a big chunk of our resources where we pay for all the sorts of things you see here. Contracted services like professional development, student transportation for some of our field trips, teacher resources, supplies, teaching materials and supplies. That's always a big line item. These numbers are not official. They're just some pre-slugging that was already here. I will have this fully developed when I make a recommendation in a couple of weeks. The only thing here that is legit is the $45,000 split across these 3 buckets for the state's $45,000 security grant. Everything else will look very different on this tab when next you see it. A few more words about signature funds for next year. We don't qualify for turnaround funds, so that part does not apply to us. But for signature funds, we have to ask for and put our hand up and say how much money we want for next year, how much money we want based on how much we've spent on those things in years previous. So I've taken the time to meet with our IB coordinator. You might remember from a previous slide, last year we were funded at 281,000 and change. I believe my request for this coming year will be 826, and here's what that looks like. We will continue to request an IB coach to help manage and lead that work. We will continue to ask for a 1 day a week band and orchestra teacher because that matches with our other IB schools in our cluster. And then we need some money for training and for dues and for resources. So I think the district's point, we will come in with a savings of around $50,000 over what we spent on that same program last year. So I have to make this request by the 31st, and I'll have a yes or a no or a partial yes or a no, and I'll include that result in my recommendation to you guys next time. And that's the rationale for the expenses I just mentioned regarding the IB program. I wanted to say a few words about our gifted delivery model at BPA. You may not know, we were budgeted for 90 gifted kids this year, which is great. It was the most we have ever had. 2 months ago, we started the gifted referral process for the year we're living in now. And that resulted, we tested so many kids. It was like 180 kids. It was crazy. And that resulted in a net gain of 53 additional students being identified as gifted and talented. So we're really experiencing a lot of upward growth in the number of our students who are identified for gifted services. A couple things come with that. Those kiddos earn us additional dollars. So for next year, we will earn significantly more money than we have traditionally spent on that program. So I still am intending to meet with our gifted lead teacher, Ms. Watts, and our instructional leadership team, but I believe we'll be able to modify our model just a little bit. You know, as an IB school, we don't rely on the resource model or the pullout model. That's been true for a number of years now. And we have a gifted lead teacher who helps our teachers provide services in the context of the classroom. We also, for the last 4 years, have been working aggressively to have a number of our teachers qualify to be gifted teachers in their homerooms. We have 17 teachers and staff who are currently endorsed for gifted and talented, which is phenomenal. Could always be more, but that's a really a lion's share of our staff. We will again make class lists next year for gifted kiddos to be in a homeroom where the teacher is gifted endorsed. However, it is likely that my recommendation that I bring to you at our next meeting will include a second gifted teacher so that we can meet the requirements of the IB and have those students in a homeroom where the teacher is gifted endorsed, but also do maybe a bi-monthly supplemental activity with those students with a second gifted teacher. I think we will be able to more than afford that. And it might scratch the itch for some of our kiddos and families who would like a little more attention paid to their gifted kiddos, especially now that we're getting so many of them. I think the numbers will merit that, and I think the budget will bear that out. But I'll noodle that out a little bit more before I bring you an actual recommendation. But I did want to mention that and make sure you're aware that we currently use the cluster model because we're an IB school. What's happening next? I think we clarified tonight we have a February 13 meeting where I will bring you a 90% baked recommendation for the budget and get your feedback and an opportunity to poke holes in it and push me a little further in some directions, perhaps. And then after we do that, I'll meet with my cluster superintendent and talk her through where we've landed. I'll have a staffing conference with HR, and then I will come back to you March 13th to share what I learned in my staffing conference and with my conversation with my supervisor, Ms. Sofianos. and then you'll have an opportunity to vote on the final version of that budget. What questions can I field, or would you like me to go back to a certain slide and talk more fully about any of this? It's a good allocation. I'm really pleased with it, and I think we'll be able to do everything we need and some things we perhaps haven't done before. I haven't been looking at the chat. I'm sorry if there's something there.
I guess I'm curious. I have a question about the massive increase in gifted identified students. Would it ever be a consideration to potentially allocate funds towards incentivizing teachers to get that gifted, what do you call it, the certificate?
Yeah, the endorsement. Yeah, it's an add-on to their certificate, Laura. I think we possibly could do that. A monetary incentive. It might be a little tricky because I've pushed 17 of them to do that previously without such an incentive. So that could get a little hairy, but I could get some guidance from HR on how to perhaps do that in a way that felt equitable. But I think that's a fine suggestion.
I'm just thinking with so many students being identified, and then, I mean, 17 teachers, that's great, but they're going to be so clumped together that then
yeah.
I like the idea of mixing the kids and like having this programming available to as many children as possible. So it just seems like it would be great if more homeroom teachers had an incentive to do that.
I hear that. I think that's a fine idea. I'll make that note. And I'll get a little guidance from HR about my tiny worry, but I think it's probably doable. It is quite a burden on those who go through the program. Many of the people on the call tonight have been through that program. It is a good bit of time away from their family, and it is a pretty robust weekly commitment that is an in-person commitment primarily. So it's no small thing. And so I'm super proud that we've been able to encourage 17 so far, but I'd love to see 10 more enrolled next year. Thanks for that note.
So I guess like one thought also would be even incentivizing, maybe not monetarily. If there's a way to once a week, like have a extra 30 minutes where they're not doing duty, or something along those lines of
Time,
extra
a gift of time.
Yeah, extra time. Yeah.
So I'm making a note to explore monetary and non-monetary incentives for gifted endorsement inclusion. I appreciate that. Thank you. It's a good budget. It's going to be really good. I feel really prepared to make recommendations that will set up my successor for success. And I'm really happy to see it. You may have heard some of the buzz around the district's budget gap. There is much talk of a gap for FY26. Central office departments all had to make a 20% cut in their budget for FY26. Based on their FY25, they had to reduce it by 20%. That is significant. So when I started hearing that buzz, I thought there's no way we can cut our budget by 20% and still function in the ways that we've become accustomed to functioning. So I was super worried about that. I'm really happy with the more robust funding for students in grades K through 5, and some of the extra staffing provisions. I think it's going to be really strong. I'm very happy with it. That's all I have, Morgan, for the budget.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions, guys, before we continue to move on?
Morgan, I'm happy for you to share that PDF with the members of this team. I will ask that we don't share it beyond the members of this team, please.
We will have to upload it to the website.
Never mind. Share it as you wish.
Open meeting rules.
Okay, very good. Thanks for keeping me honest.
Yes. All right, so if nobody else has any questions, David, do you have anything to add to this for principal's report?
I do not. This was the bulk of my prep for tonight.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. You can go ahead and stop sharing your screen if you'd like.
I will do that now. Thank you.
And then all we have, our other information item, is to come from our Uniform Advisory Committee. if Asha wants to hop on and just give us a brief update to the meeting that they had.
All right, good evening, everyone. So the uniform committee met, and so we got together and we discussed some questions that could possibly go on the survey for teachers, students, and the community. And so I just want to, Morgan, if you can share those questions so everyone can see them.
Should be shared now.
All right. All right. So the committee decided to have a separate survey for the students as well as adults. And so if you want to just take some time and just kind of look over the questions, I can read them out loud. And then, we welcome your feedback. Anything that you would like for us to take back to the team, we can certainly do so. But I'll just read them and then we'll go from there. So for the student survey, which would you prefer to wear to school? So we talked about having a visual for the kids to see so they can, whenever they vote, they can see, for example, a picture of a uniform, then a picture of regular casual clothes. Two, do uniforms help make your mornings easier? And like I said, I also provide an example. Do uniforms help you feel like you belong to the school community? And do uniforms help you focus on your classwork? And so with the student survey, the committee discussed having the kids to complete the surveys at school during SEL time with their teachers. And so the adult survey, does having uniforms create hardship for your family? Does having uniforms improve the learning environment? Do you believe wearing a uniform creates a sense of community and school pride? Does the school uniform create a barrier to individual self-expression? And should BPA continue the current school uniform policy as it is currently written? And so also, we discussed having a drop-down option for who's answering and then also collecting the emails. So the adults, including teachers, parents, can only answer the survey one time. And so the survey we talked about being in a Google form or Google, what am I trying? Yes, I said that right.
Google form, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So those are the questions that we came up with. The timeline that we discussed was opening it in between winter break and spring break was the timeline that we discussed. So I welcome any feedback, any questions that you may have. We also talked about ways to broadcast it. And so teachers putting it in their newsletters, putting it in Remind, also Facebook, and then just, helping to get the word out.
That sounds great. Thanks, Asha. Does anybody have any questions about the process and where we are right now, or any feedback for the survey?
I'd just say thanks for taking this on, Asha. I think it looks like you've had a great first meeting. I wonder if there's any thought around differentiating the student survey for primary kids versus intermediate. I don't expect an answer in this moment. It's something to maybe think about.
Thank
you. Thank you. I love the survey. I appreciate it happening at school to make sure that we get a chance to hear from all students. I wonder even if, in the same way we do attendance, if we could have a friendly competition between homerooms for like the most responses or something to make sure we're also hearing from families. I did have a question about like are the student survey questions going to be like a yes or no, or is it going to be like a Likert scale? Like, because like, do uniforms help you feel like you belong? That could be a like yes or no, or it could be like uniforms make me feel like I belong. Like 1, strongly disagree, 5, strongly agree. And I just wondered if the committee talked about kind of what are the parameters on the questions to see kind of what kind of data we would get back.
So we did discuss yes or no, and then we also discussed having the pictures to just help them, make it clear. And then the teachers also suggested that they would help when the kids are in the classroom to kind of help make sure that they understand what each question means. So they would be a yes or no question, or a response rather.
I was
Is
going to say that. Oh,
Sorry,
sorry.
Marlene.
No, it's fine.
Is-
I was just going to say that I appreciate coming from like a kindergarten brain teacher still. It's still in there. The pictures are really going to help the younger kids for sure. But I was also wondering about question number 5 on the adult survey. I think everybody knows the current policy, but is there any way we can add that in there just so that there's clarification on it? So like everybody understand, like most of the kids know that they can wear whatever they want on Friday to an extent, but I think it would be helpful to actually list the current policy there.
Yes, yes, yes. Great suggestion. Thank you. We should.
And Ashley, if you need that graphic, I can share the graphic for you that we have on the website.
Yes.
My question was, I know Mr. White brought up primary versus intermediate, but is the expectation or the intent that we want the questions, especially since they're yes and no questions, to just be the same survey across the board?
Yes. So the team discussed having a different survey. And so to simplify it, which is why we discussed the pictures to be shown just for everyone to see. So it will be the same across the board.
Great.
Thanks for talking that through. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for your feedback, everyone.
Yes. Ashley, you're a rock star. Very much appreciate you leading this committee. Alrighty, y'all. Does anybody else have anything to bring to the Go team? Any announcements?
Russell Jarrett has joined us. Hey, Coach.
Yeah, he's just hanging out. He wanted to get the news on the budget.
Hello, I'm here.
Hey, Coach.
How are y'all? Thanks for sharing all this great information.
Are you trying to find a line item for the BPA basketball team?
No, not quite yet. We're having fun, though.
You sure are. Good job.
Thank you.
I did have a question, Principal White. I don't know if it's Go Team or just a question in general that you may or may not have heard. So I know a lot of districts during the weather this particular season, the past few weeks, some districts went virtual. And I understand why APS did not go virtual, simply because, I guess the K through 2 doesn't have tablets or anything, or the devices are at school. So is that why it was chosen to just, even though was a declare of state of emergency by the state, which means you don't have to make that school day up either. So is that why? Right. Is that why we didn't go virtual?
So partly, Charles, all of our students have devices that they use at school. It is my policy that unless the district decides we're going to have a virtual learning day, those devices don't go home because they tend to not come back. They tend to get broken. The chargers are never heard from again. So there's a lot of things that go along with that. The nomenclature of the closure we had is super important to me. If the district says school is closed, in my brain, that means no kid and no grown-up has any responsibility that day. If they trigger a virtual learning day, that's a different thing, right? Like if it's an asynchronous learning day, to me, that looks like a learning packet that our teachers prep and send home. Then our teachers will have office hours when parents or kids can log in and ask questions. But a school closure is not that, right? And I think I've encouraged Audrey, whom you met earlier tonight, to really press that point, because the district sent out a message that said school is closed, and schools may send you information about a continuous learning plan. To me, those two things are in conflict. If school is closed, then school is closed. And some of my teachers were copying packets of work to send home, and I discouraged them from doing that. I said, look, I'm not sending you home with work that I expect you to do at home when you are snowed in. So please don't send homework with students when they should be out sledding and building snowmen. So
Absolutely.
the language of that is where I draw that line. If the
Okay.
district calls an asynchronous learning day, then for sure we will send home activities for kids to do. We will have office hours for teachers and staff where you can get answers to your questions. If it's a virtual learning dismissal, like if we're going to be out all week, yep, we will send those devices home. We will have assignments in Google Classroom. We will do all those things. But for a closure, I just want you to go play.
Yeah, sounds great. I was like, okay, I'm a little confused on what's being said. Yeah, okay, got it.
Yeah, it was
Thank
a
you.
little confusing. I tried to clarify for our community on Facebook and remind, but I agree that the message was a little bit muddy. I didn't appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Diane, question?
No questions, just a couple of announcements, if that's okay, if I may.
Yes, please.
So the first one is this year, partly because of all the changes to the budget process. David knows that twice a week we're offering drop-in office hours for principals, but once a week we're also offering from the Go Team office drop-in office hours for any Go Team member who wants to come in. It's the Go Team office's version of Ask Me Anything, if you're familiar with that AMA. So it's on Wednesdays from noon to 1 if you can drop in and ask questions. Of course, you are always 100% encouraged to email, call us, reach out at any time. We try very hard to respond to everything as quickly as possible and provide the best support we possibly can. But so we have that on Wednesdays. You should have received the link on Wednesday morning. We send it out so that and we'll send it out every week. And then the other thing is our declarations for elections are open, and you should be seeing the link for that. Again, we'll be sending that out, but be very thoughtful about who, especially for our parents and staff, if any of you know that you are rolling off or won't be at the school any longer, think about who might be a really good fit for that new principal that's coming in to really help support this work, because you guys do such a great job of it. I would love to see it continue. So, we cannot stress strongly enough how far a personal ask goes to that declaration process with, hey, I've been on Go Team. I really think that your voice would be great. Consider, declaring your candidacy. So declarations are open till February 28th, and voting for households and staff will take place after spring break. I think it opens April 16th. So, okay.
Great. Thank you so much, Diane. Does anybody need clarification of who's rolling off, or is everybody on the same page?
Yeah. I think I'm finishing somebody else's 2-year term. Is that right? Okay. So I need to declare again if I want to stay.
And I can double check that, Allie, for you.
I think it's same for me as well. Not sure how to confirm that.
I'm checking for you all right now.
There you go. We've got
Diane, I'm rolling off too.
Yeah. You're not rolling off, you're leaving. There's a difference.
However, Mr. White, if we were to just recommend you to be on the Go Team and you're in the community,
you can be a community member.
I would not do that.
I would gladly give my seat up for you, sir. I'm just letting you know.
That would be stressful for my successor, and I would not do that.
All right, so 2 years then, fine, got it.
Yes, Laura is completing out a term, so if she wishes to continue and meets the eligibility requirements, she can declare her candidacy. And also, Laura, we don't have an email address for you on record. So if you could send an email to goteam@apsk12.org, we would really appreciate it.
Okay.
Marlene is rolling off. Mr. Brown will be rolling off, and Asha Rogers will be rolling off. So with Mr. Brown, he's in a community seat. So the community seat is nominated by the principal at the first meeting of the next school year. So Mr. Brown, if you would like to continue, definitely reach out to the new principal. And the swing seat is nominated by any voting member of the Go Team. So.
Thank you, Diane. So Allie, you're good for another year. All right, y'all. Does anybody have any additional business for Go Team? All right, looks good. So we have reached the end. May I have a motion to adjourn our meeting?
A motion.
Second.
Is there, thank you, Charles. We've got our second. All in favor, please raise your hand. Say aye.
That
Any
was Jordan.
opposed?
Jordan, that was you motioning, right?
Yeah, sorry. I
No, no,
had-
no, you're totally fine. I just wanted to make sure.
All good. Any abstentions? We're good. Our meeting is adjourned. It is 7:31. Good job, team.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Have
you,
a great
everyone.
night.
Everybody.
Let me know if you have any questions.